And we are live. All right. Here we are at the Healing Mastery Summit with Scott Schmaren. Thank you for joining us, Scott.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, let me get some background to Scott because you've got quite an extensive background, and I'm super excited that you're here because this is directly related to what people who are coming on here to learn about. You have a lot of information to transfer to them. So you're a neuroperformanceologist. Is that something you coined, or is that an actual term?
No, it's something I coined. I mean, I've studied all different types of modalities, and it's like, okay, what kind of a moniker do you put on that? So it made sense to me.
Yeah, it sounds good. Sounds good to me. So for those listening, if you don't know who he is, this guy has an extensive background. You're internationally known hypnotist, speaker, coach, author. You co-wrote a book with Stepping Stones of Success along with Jack Canfield, Deepak Chopra, and Dennis Waitley, some real heavy hitters in transformation. And you're also the creator of the Quatric Formula for Success, which is a life transformation program that you created to help yourself lose 180 pounds. And that's something I'd love to talk to you about. And those that don't know, he was on Oprah, and even Oprah said, if Scott can do it, I can do it, and so can you. So these are coming from Oprah's words. And then you're a regular on the Howard Stern show. That's the first time I've actually heard you. And I love all the series that you've been on there. And so you've spoken for many more organizations, and you continue to spread the wealth of knowledge and share this information with the world as you're doing here today. So yeah. Again, thank you for being here, and I don't even know where to start. I guess we're going to start where you were in pain, you were overweight, there was a breaking point, a literal breaking point. You actually sat in a chair, and the chair broke because you were overweight, and this was a point of like, was this the lowest point in your life, would you say?
No, it wasn't the lowest point, and I spent a good part of my life in pain.
Okay.
I'm pretty empathic, and having that ability as a child is painful because you really don't know what you have, and you walk into a room and you're feeling all kinds of icky things from people. Yeah. And that coupled with being very shy and being overweight and being teased and bullied, yeah, life was painful for a long time. There were a lot of lessons in there that I had to learn. But actually, the lowest point wasn't in that situation. So I had a situation where I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I was really excited to be invited. I mean, I didn't get invited to many parties, and there's probably 50 people there. And I made myself a big plate of food, took my Diet Coke, and I went and I saw this beautiful rocking chair to sit down in. And I sat down in this rocking chair, and just like a scene out of a movie, it broke. When I say it broke, it didn't break. I crushed it. It's like there was wood flying everywhere, sprawled on the floor, food, Diet Coke everywhere. And the whole room just froze. And they all turned around and they looked. And they all started to laugh. And I guess it would be funny if you were watching it. And I was so embarrassed. All they wish is that I was about this big. I could go run and hide in the corner and nobody would see me. And I got out of there as fast as I could. And I remember spending that New Year's Eve alone in my apartment with my two best friends at that time. A large sausage pizza from a place called Nick's. And I ordered from Nick's 5-6 days a week. I had a tab there. So this is in the 1980s. I had a tab there. I didn't take credit cards. I used to write them a check once a week. And a frozen Sara Lee cheesecake. And I ate them all. And I was angry. I hated the world. I hated myself. I blamed everybody else for what was going wrong in my life. And I was bitter, but that wasn't the lowest point in my life.
Wow.
The lowest point in my life came later on. And it had been, I just failed at another attempt to lose weight. So when I say fail, I would lose 150 pounds and then put it back on. And I remember sitting there. I had just put back on, I think it was 165 pounds. And I go, okay, now what do I do? There's nothing else for me to do. What else do I try? Pick a program. I've been on it. Okay. Yeah. And I felt hopeless. And in that moment, I lost my desire and my will to live. And I remember taking a bottle of sleeping pills and a bottle of painkillers. And I remember putting them in a paper cup and going into my bathroom and putting that cup on the bathroom counter. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I really didn't see anything. Nothing was looking back at me. And I felt that empty. And I took all the pills. And I took a lot of pills. I probably took enough pills to kill an elephant.
Yeah.
And, I was so I'm a giant. I'm 5'6". Okay. Sometimes I tell people I'm 5'7".
Yeah.
And I weighed 360 pounds.
Yeah.
I had a 56-inch waist. I was huge. I was round.
Yeah.
And I remember taking all the pills, and I had this chair I used to sit in, right? I watch TV in that chair. I eat in that chair. It was almost like my security blanket. I felt safe in that chair. And I remember feeling relieved that maybe my pain was going to end, but also terrified. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And at some point I passed out. I don't remember when. I never went to a hospital. And the next morning, and I remember it was morning, I opened my eyes still in that chair. And I remember seeing the sun shining down on me from above, coming through my living room window. And I had this very surreal moment. I opened my eyes. It's not even describable in words, but it was so peaceful. I really thought I was dead. And in that moment, I realized that I was alive. And I realized that I must be here for a reason. And I got really clear. And I remember just saying, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for what happened. It's not anybody else's fault. It's my responsibility. And then I said, okay, I'm going to get out of this chair and I'm going to figure out why there's two people inside of me. And this is what most people struggle with. Yeah. They have a desire to make a change in their life, and they start moving towards that change. And then as they move towards that change, something inside of them pulls them right back to where they were before. I had like these two people inside of me. So I set out, I wanted to figure out why there were two people inside of me.
Yeah.
And I started studying and reading books on how your mind worked, and realized that everything had to do with your subconscious mind. And I learned different modalities from hypnosis to neurolinguistic programming to different types of meditation. Pick something. I've probably studied it, still do.
Yeah.
And I started to evolve and change. I started to heal the pain that I was feeling from my past. And as I was able to let it go, I would change and people would notice. And as they would notice, I would change more. And then they would start asking me, well, what are you doing? And I started helping other people. And the little voice inside of me said, this is what you should be doing. And at some point I walked away from my real estate career. Here I am. This is what I do. So it's fun. I love what I do.
Yeah, it's awesome. And for the people listening, because this is a healing mastery summit, so a lot of people are probably coming on here, and I identify with your story because there's a point where I hit where I didn't want to live anymore either. And so for those that are listening, there is hope and you can heal. And I was at the lowest point of my life at one point. I never thought I would come back and be normal again. And so we're both testament that it can happen. And
yes.
So what was the biggest transition? Like, okay, you realized that the subconscious mind was the problem. A lot of people realize that, but still don't transform and they stay stuck. You went from 360, was it, to lost 100?
I weigh about 171, 175, sometimes a little bit less than that. But yeah, that's pretty much how I've been for the years.
Yeah, it's been decades, right?
It's probably been 15, 16 years. 16
years, okay. So awesome. So how did you go from that transition? Was it the hypnosis that you started to learn and started to reprogram your own mind?
I think that's a great question. I think what's important to realize is to know something doesn't give you the solution. A lot of times we find out things, it takes us years to find out things, and then it becomes an excuse not to do it. It becomes a rationalization.
Right.
So it's not just enough to know that it's the subconscious mind where change takes place. It's okay, how you access your subconscious mind and what do you do when you get there? And what I found is that really hypnosis is an extremely powerful tool. It allows you to go into the subconscious mind with control.
Yeah.
Because that's where everything is. The pictures, the habits, the values, the beliefs you have, your creativity, your imagination, all the patterns, good and bad, that you are running inside of your head are coming from that place. Yeah. And if you go in there with control and purpose and direction, you can change those things. So how do you do that? And the modalities that I've learned and combining a lot of them and creating things has allowed me to enter that and do that for myself now and for other people. like I always tell my story when I talk. I don't tell my story to impress people, but I think people see themselves in my story.
Yeah.
You know, everybody is struggling with something, and they don't know why. And why is maybe not always important, but they're struggling with something. And as they're struggling with it, they're trying to figure out how they can get past it. And what I want people to realize is I'm no different than you or anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't have any special skills. And if I can do these things, then anybody can do these things.
Wow, that's really motivating. So if someone was in this position and say, let's just say it's weight, right? They have a weight problem. What can they start doing that will flip the switch, let's say, to push back that person that's self-sabotaging, right?
Well,
Go ahead.
I think one of the reasons people self-sabotage their success, I've noticed this with people, especially with struggling with their weight and a lot of other things, is they have this idea in their head they have to be perfect.
Right.
So like I would go for long periods of time. I'd go on a program for 6 months, 8 months, lose a lot of weight. Perfect. You can't be perfect. You're a human being. So if you set the expectation up of being perfect, at some point you're going to fail. And the moment you step off of that program for one time, which really shouldn't be a big deal, something goes off in the back of my mind saying, see, you can't be perfect. You're not good enough. This is not going to work, blah, 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 blah. And then slowly you start sabotaging your success, and your mind keeps rationalizing why it's okay. You know, you gain a couple of pounds. They go, oh, what's the big deal? You know, you gained a couple of pounds. You've lost 100 pounds. You could lose that in a couple of days. Your mind starts to rationalize. And then one day you wake up and you're heavier than you ever were before. And it's probably true for every other habit. And the moment you take being perfect off the table, like I'm not perfect. I don't have to be perfect. I'm consistent.
Yeah.
I'm consistent with what I do. So maybe 75 to 80% of the time, I'm really good about how I eat. But if I'm going someplace, I really enjoy eating now. I enjoy having a great meal. Food can be pleasurable. Whoever says it doesn't have to be is just baloney. It can be pleasurable, but I'm not all consumed with it. It doesn't have any power over me. And I know that if I have a meal that's a little bit more decadent than I normally would, it's one meal and it's done. I don't care. So I think that people have a load on their shoulders. We live in a world where everybody wants to be perfect. They want to look perfect. I mean, we have social media and people are doctoring up their photos. They're photoshopping themselves with different filters. Everybody wants to be perfect, and it's an expectation that they can't live up to. And when they can't live up to, what are they doing? They're creating more stress and more anxiety in their life. And then there's just no way they can succeed. They're going to fail.
Yeah.
In their minds, they're failing. And that just makes it worse. And people become hopeless. I mean, listen, we're living in a world now where people are taking more antidepressant drugs. Compulsive habits, bad habits from alcohol, drugs, food, shopping, whatever it is, are all getting worse because they're ways of people, not constructively, but they're dealing with their pain that way.
Yeah. So what you're saying, I think is, and I've seen this myself in dealing with the weight loss industry, is that people compare themselves to their ideal scenario rather than comparing themselves where they came from. Like they're projecting out, like they want this ideal that's unobtainable, and so when they don't hit it, they feel bad about themselves, kind of thing.
Yes, or they have an ideal and they have an idea how they're going to get there. Okay, so let me give you an example. I had a lady I worked with once.
Yeah.
And I live in Chicago, and we have this, I would say, a better quality fast food place, and they have this amazing chocolate cake. And she's telling me in our phone calls, I love their chocolate cake. I love it. I'm never having it again. I go, that's a really dumb proposition, because what's going to happen is you're going to diligently follow a program like that 6 months, 12, whatever it is. At some point, you're going to break down and have the cake. And now all the work you've done in your mind is going to say, I failed. So I said, why don't you just do the opposite? We're going to put the cake into your eating program. You not only should you have it, you are going to have it twice a month. Right. Twice a month, you are required to have it. It's part of your program. So now what happens? There's no guilt. She's required to have it. I mean, to have the piece of cake once in a while, what's the big deal? It's not going to hurt you. And if it gives you some pleasure and it satisfies that need, who cares? So now there's no pressure to not have it. She's required to. There's more pressure to have it than not to have it. So she has it a couple times a month. But we make these unreasonable requests. And I think a lot of people fail at their goals. You know, a very small percentage of people accomplish their goals, whether it's weight loss, business, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Is they fail for there's a lot of reasons, but they fail for the two main reasons are is they have an idea how long it's supposed to take.
Yeah.
Probably wrong. You know, if I've been heavy all my life and I have an idea how long it's supposed to take me to get to a certain weight,
right,
I'm probably not, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what happens is they don't meet that expectation and they think one of two things. I'm not good enough.
Right.
I can't do this, or what you're teaching me doesn't work. And so what do? They jump off. Or they start to make progress in a direction. And then they move forward, they get some momentum, and then they stop doing what they were doing because they don't think they need to do it anymore.
Right.
And in all those cases, it's the old part of our mind. You know, the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and not real. And it doesn't distinguish time, and it doesn't distinguish between what's right and wrong.
Right.
It doesn't have a good or bad filter. So if you've been heavy all your life, that's your norm. It's going to protect that. So now you go on a program where you're restricting your eating and you're doing things you didn't do before, and your mind's saying, well, in the back of your mind, it's saying, well, wait a minute. This is a bad thing because being heavy is a really good thing. It keeps you safe. It keeps you loved, whatever BS excuse it's giving you. So it starts to say things like, oh, come on, you've been so good for a while. Why don't you do this? It starts to rationalize why you should step off.
Right.
And so until you change that, you're always going to go back to where you were before. We see it in a lot of instances in business too. People have, you know, I work with salespeople, and a lot of them have issues with money. And when we trace it back, a lot of it goes back to when they were kids because of some of the religious beliefs they heard, like, well, money's the root of all evil.
Right.
Only dishonest people make a good living. So what happens? They start to make, in their mind, with a lot of money, and all of a sudden a little voice in the back of their head says, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Yeah. You're a good person, and a good person doesn't make money like this, so you better stop it. So it starts to convince you you're working too hard, or maybe you should buy something you can't afford, and it begins to sabotage. And they run the cycle up, down, and really was, I don't know how many times in my life I lost 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 pounds. And then a year later, I'd be heavier than I ever was before. So.
Okay. So one of the topics I wanted to speak to you about is hypnosis. It's a topic I love to speak about, and just neurology in general. But most people probably listening to this, I don't know, I would assume that they aren't familiar too much with what hypnosis is. A lot of people think, oh, hypnosis, I've seen on a show, and some guy does tricks and gets someone to just quack like a duck or dance funny on stage. And but hypnosis is a really powerful tool that people can use on their own. They don't need a hypnotist, but it can enhance their performance. Is this correct? Maybe just go into a little bit about hypnosis.
You know, hypnosis, I have found, I use a lot of modalities, and I use a lot of different modalities like neuro-linguistic programming, things like that, in the hypnotic state.
Right.
And in fact, the guy who created NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, Dr. Richard Bandler, has stated that hypnosis is the single most powerful state of mind to use to make change. Mm-hmm. And it's also the quickest. Right. It's not hard to access. You know, people have this misconception of what hypnosis is. They think it's a stage show that, you know, you're going to bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken.
Right.
But the reality is, it's really powerful. You know, people say, well, I can't be hypnotized. You're in and out of the hypnotic state all day long. Like, how many people drive to work every day? They have no recollection of them ever getting to their office or home because they do it every day, but yet they didn't run a traffic light. They didn't kill anybody. They didn't destroy their car. They're on autopilot. And what we have to understand is maybe 10 to 15% of what you do on a daily basis, you're doing consciously. Almost everything you're doing, you're running a pattern from your subconscious mind.
Right.
It's the things you do habitually, from brushing your teeth to tying your shoes on, which leg you put in your pants first. It's all on autopilot. You're doing it. You don't have any thought process in it. And accessing it is not difficult. Like, I'm going to speak at a hypnosis conference here in a couple of weeks, and I'm doing a 4-hour presentation there, and one of the things to talk about, it's not accessing it that's difficult. It's what you do with it when you get there, and are you using it effectively and productively to make permanent and lasting change? And that's what the question is. Because the reality is, if diet and exercise were the keys to losing weight, everybody would be thin.
Right.
There are certainly important tools, but the key is the picture you have of yourself. Like,
right.
Okay, so when I started this process, I created this image of myself in my head. And it started out with a statement that I had a strong, healthy, lean, attractive, youthful body weighing 175 pounds or less that I maintained easily for the rest of my life.
Right.
And then I expanded that out. What would I look like? How would I dress? How would I carry myself? What would my emotions be like? How would I be connected to the universe spiritually? What would I be like emotionally? What would my relationships be like? How would they be different? So I created this whole image, this whole vision of what I want to be like. And again, if we know the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish time and what's real and not real, now I burn that into my subconscious mind as if it's happening now. Mm-hmm. And now your subconscious mind starts to drive towards that. So old things fall away. Sometimes they're subtle, you don't even notice them. And slowly but surely, like people think I went from point A to point B and it was a straight shot. And I go, no, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
It's a slow healing evolution. Yeah. Like one of the examples I use is I have a client I work with who was a comedian, and he had a weight issue. And one of his issues was he drank a ton of Pepsi. And, I always start out my calls with my clients is, what's going on this week? What happened this week? And that gives me an assessment. I can listen. I don't listen to their words always because I can hear better what their emotions are, because the words and the emotions don't always match. Right. And he starts laughing on the telephone. I go, what's so funny? He goes, it's the damnedest thing. He goes, I went to the grocery store, I bought a case of Pepsi. I brought it home and I never drank it. He goes, I wasn't trying not to drink it. I just kind of forgot about it. And what happened is as the image of himself changed, your subconscious mind is a goal-achieving mechanism. So what it's going to do is if that picture becomes strong enough, it says, you want this, we are this, but then you can't do that. Yeah. And then those things start to fall away. Like I remember being really heavy and maybe just starting getting off the couch and moving my body a little bit more. I work out hard 6-7 days a week now. Well, I didn't start that way. If I would have tried to do that when I weighed 360, I'd be dead right now from a heart attack. I mean, I got on a treadmill. I remember the first time I walked a very slow mile and thought I was going to die. Yeah. Okay. So it's an evolutionary. I've been the same weight now for a very long time. However, my body composition, my mindset, how I think and what I do are not the same today as they were a year ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. Yeah. You keep evolving and changing. And we got to get past this misconception that once I get there, I'm all done. Right. It doesn't work that way. It's about consistency. I've been doing my routine now for a long time. Yeah. When I say my routine, I do my gratitude. I do my meditation, which is my hypnotic state every day. I go to the gym. I have a routine every morning. And I would say I do it consistently. Like if I'm at home and I'm not out of town, it's every day. Yeah. When I'm out of town, I adapt that routine. And we have to learn to be flexible. So you have to learn to be diligent in the things we do, flexible in how we do them. Like I work out in the gym here. I work out really hard. If I'm going on the road someplace, yeah, I have the expectation of working out the same way in a hotel gym, which is usually a broken universal machine, some dumbbells, a treadmill, an elliptical trainer. Right. I can't do it that way. So what happens, I set myself up to fail. But if I plan ahead of time and I have a different routine that I can do with no equipment, then I can satisfy that need and I don't think about failing.
So it's all about preparation.
If you're a general and you're preparing for battle, if you prepare for every possible scenario you can think of, your chances of winning that battle are great. If you go into that battle shooting from the hip saying, oh, I can handle it, no problem, you're going to get slaughtered.
Yeah. So in terms of neurology, you're essentially accessing the prefrontal cortex, right? So that's what it allows us to kind of visualize out into the future, and you're creating these synapses so that, so essentially, and I think this is proven in research, that you actually start, when you start visualizing through like a hypnotic state, you start preparing, or you can't even tell the difference between reality and what you're putting in your mind. And then the reality starts to come true because you've created synapses. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, here's a simple way to look at it. Okay. All right. Your mind takes in millions and millions and millions of bits of information every second of every day, mostly through your eyes, sense of smell, taste, hearing, feeling. Okay. Most of it is visual. However, your conscious mind can only process. So you're taking in millions of bits of information a second. Your conscious mind processes somewhere between 700 and 1,000 would be generous, a minute. So millions a second, 1,000 a minute. What do you do with all that information? If it registered in your conscious mind, you'd go out of your head. Right. So what happens is you delete almost all of it. Yeah. and you keep it based on what's relevant to the current situation and what your value belief system is. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you change the picture in your head, you begin to notice things that can help you accomplish that. Your mind, it begins to focus on those things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you ever notice, like, you're thinking about something, all of a sudden you start to notice things that are relevant to the thing you're thinking about.
Right.
So if to change the picture in my mind of how I see the world and how I see myself and how I look and feel and experience life, I begin to notice things. And your subconscious mind says, oh, that could be interesting. It might be able to help you. So it becomes almost like you feel like you're attracting things. You're noticing more. You're noticing things that before would become irrelevant. So the example of that would be, you buy a brand new car. You drive it off the dealer's lot, and you're driving home, and you notice all these other brilliant people like you that bought the same car you bought. Maybe it's a different color, but you're noticing your car everywhere. Now, the reality is those cars were there yesterday.
Right.
The difference is now it's part of your consciousness, both subconscious and your conscious mind. And so we activate those things. I mean, neuroscientists have shown that we do that. What we are focused on in our subconscious mind, we become aware of and in tune with in our conscious mind.
That's awesome. That totally makes sense. And you spoke about your morning routine, which I share some of those. I think gratitude is one of the biggest things, but hypnosis and meditation, they're in the same state, right? They're in the same kind of brainwave.
Right.
So would you call yourself like what you're doing, hypnosis, meditation, or is it interchangeable in terms of the words?
Well, I'm sure everybody wouldn't say they're interchangeable. I would. Okay. There's different types of meditation. So a more traditional Eastern, transcendental meditation is about silencing your mind. And a lot of people struggle with that because they have busy, active minds. I'm one of those people. And it's great if you can do that. But if you're entering, my perspective is you're entering the subconscious mind, why don't you just do something with it and give it some purpose and direction?
Right.
But, you got that doorway open, and silence is a beautiful thing. And sometimes silence is the perfect thing. And sometimes, directing your mind to what you want it to do is a wonderful thing. I think it's very important. The reality is your subconscious mind is looking for something to do. So
Right.
you have a choice. You can let it randomly pick something. And of course, it's got the mentality of a 2-year-old that doesn't care. So if it sees something that's interesting, that's really bad and detrimental, it'll go for it and say, hey, this is a great thing.
Yeah.
Or you might as well just tell it what you want it to do. And if it's because it's going to drive towards something anyway, why don't you control what it's driving towards?
Yeah. So basically taking control of your own mind and taking responsibility is the biggest thing that you've seen people transform and basically transform their life. Is that like the first step?
I think so. I think for the average person, I would say that if you want to talk about hypnosis, you should probably go see somebody. But if you're going to do simple things at home, like a good example is every night before you go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're creatures of routine. Whether you know it or not, you have a wake-up routine and you have a bedtime routine.
Right.
That bedtime routine is as you get closer to sleep, your mind is starting to slow down.
Yeah.
So you're slowly entering into alpha. And so when you're laying in bed at night, think about what you really want. Think about what you want to be focused on. In fact, a better idea would be take some time and write out how you want your life to be if it's already happened. What you look like, what you feel like, how you carry yourself, what you're doing for a living. And write it out clearly, like you're writing out a novel. Write it out in great detail. Mm-hmm. Actually, think about it, it's the greatest novel of all. It's a novel about your life, right?
Yeah.
And then make a short paragraph that maybe it's like one scene out of a movie, where that scene to you would represent all the success you want to have in your life.
Okay.
Like a 10 or 15 second movie trailer, where if you see that in your mind, it means you've gotten all these other things.
Gotcha.
And then every night as you're going to sleep, just think about it and let yourself fall asleep. Because your subconscious mind is up 24/7. That's where all your dreams come from. Good dreams, bad dreams, crazy dreams. So why not give it something to play with all night long?
Yeah.
In fact, if anybody's read the book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's original work, Law of Success, he talked about these highly successful people, the people that really created the United States the way it is now made it such a huge industrial power at the time. People like Henry Ford and Alexander Graham Bell and the Wright brothers and all these people that really created great things. They would do that. They would, every night before they would go to bed, they would focus on what their chief, as Napoleon would say, their chief aim or their definite major purpose in life is, and they go to sleep on it.
Yeah.
In fact, Napoleon Hill talked about is deciding what you want, focusing your conscious attention on it, then turning it over to your subconscious mind, and then turning it over to the infinite intelligence of the universe. So if this has been done by some of the most highly successful people throughout history, why not do it yourself?
Awesome. That's amazing. Now, I wanted to ask you about healing.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say your definition of healing is? Do you have a definition of healing?
You know, I look back, healing is an evolutionary process.
Okay.
It's about, because healing is not making the things from the past go away. It's taking the things from the past that you've learned and maybe that caused you pain, and then taking what you learned from that and moving forward. And it's an evolutionary healing is an evolutionary process.
Right.
It's about discovering about yourself, focusing on the qualities you have about yourself that are great and wonderful, and maybe learning to be with other people that have some of those qualities.
Right.
And it's about moving forward in your life. Healing is about moving forward. It's really that simple. I have a tendency to make things really simple. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But, you know, I know that if it's not simple, I'm not doing it. And I also know if things are too complicated, nobody does them.
That's so true.
So.
Totally. So have you seen when you change the subconscious mind to do these pictures that you just talked about, like going to bed with this scene in your mind, does that cause somebody to let go of dis-ease, what we'd say?
Yeah, it can. You know, again, so your subconscious mind, I say, is like a great mathematician. So if you give it the end game, here's how I want it to turn out.
Yeah.
Then your subconscious mind says, well, in order for you to do that, you've got to do this. In order to do this, you got to do this, and starts to work backwards to the present moment.
Right.
So yeah, it works things out. You know, what happens is people focus on what they don't want, and what happens? They get more of what they don't want.
Right.
So if you focus on what you want, you'll move towards what you want. And in order to get what you want, this old stuff has to fall away.
Right.
So it's not saying, I don't want to be in pain anymore. I don't want this. I want this. This is what I want to be happy. I want to be successful. I want to enjoy life. I want to be loved. That's what you want to focus on, not on the opposite. Because you start saying, well, I don't want this and I don't want that. And all your subconscious mind's hearing is, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get because this is what you're talking about all the time. You know, we spent too much time on the problem, not enough time on what we want. It's a very simplistic thing.
Yeah, I love that you break it down to simplicity, because that's what I've found over time. It's like, if it's not simple, no one's going to do it. Now, in terms of, so you've done it for yourself. You've transformed your life. Can you give some examples of people that you have helped that have done the same thing just by using some meditation, hypnosis?
Sure.
You've worked with people for you've worked with high-level people for a long time, right?
So this is one of my favorite stories, and she's one of my favorite people. So I had this lady come to me who was a bodybuilder, and I love her. And I'm 5'6". She's short. I mean, she comes up to here on me. So I feel tall when I'm with her. So she comes to me. She's an amateur bodybuilder, and her whole desire in her life is she wanted to win a pro bodybuilding championship, and then use that as a catalyst to create her own gym for fitness and health competitors.
Okay.
So I worked with her in a training cycle. Her training didn't change. What I noticed, she didn't have a real clear picture of what that would look like in her mind. So we created that picture, what it will be like on stage, and she can feel the heat of the lights, and she can hear the crowd cheering, a lot of detail, okay? And then fast forward the picture, and she has this gym opening, and she's become a world-renowned coach for competitors. So actually, it's actually 6 years ago in the last couple of days. It will be last weekend.
Oh wow!
It was she entered an IFBB Pro Bodybuilding Championship in Pittsburgh. She enters in 3 divisions. She wins all 3 divisions. Now here's what's interesting about that. She was 56 years old. So she won her age division. She won the age division under her, and she won the age division under that one. In fact, in the third one, the woman she beat was not much older than her daughter.
Wow.
It's something that had never been done. And it was really exciting. And then fast forward, within a year, her gym opened up. Her gym is still open. It's doubled in size. It's highly successful. And everything's exactly the way she pictured it in her mind.
Wow.
And that's the only thing she changed. You know, think of creating this vision in your mind as you're going on a great vacation. If you don't pick a destination to where you're going to go, how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
It's hard to plan out how to get to a destination if you don't have the destination in mind.
Yeah.
And creating a vision for that. I mean, you know, I had, and sometimes things happen that are unexpected. Just to give you an idea of the power of the subconscious mind, I had a gentleman that came to me. I had worked with him before for his golf game. So he calls me up and says, you know, Scott, I need to see you. I go, what's going on? He goes, I'll tell you when I get there. So he comes to see me, and he tells me he has prostate cancer. And I've worked with men with prostate cancer. They usually are focused on two things. They want to be cancer-free, but they also want to be able to function sexually as a male.
Right.
Because that's their biggest fear. So I work with him, and it's the day before his surgery. He's going to go in. He's going to have surgery, one night in the hospital, come home, and recover.
Right.
And so a couple of days before his surgery, I do a session with him, and I record the session. And it's about healing his body and taking control of the functions of his body to induce more healing, speed up healing, but also to reduce pain. Okay? Yeah. So he listens to the recording right before he goes into surgery as planned, has the surgery on a late Friday afternoon. Everything goes great. Well, hospital shift changes from the weekly people to the weekend people in the hospital. And then something bad really happens. Somebody made a huge mistake, and he was given a lethal dose of heparin, which is a blood thinner. And he starts hemorrhaging. He's hemorrhaging everywhere. His blood pressure is dropping. He's bleeding everywhere. Now they call the emergency surgeon on call. He's already in an emergency surgery.
Wow.
So they're telling his wife that he might die because they can't stop his bleeding. So in a moment of clarity, he takes out his phone with the recording on it, puts on the recording. He raises his blood pressure almost 20 points. 2 hours later, they were finally able to perform emergency surgery on him. Now, the lethal dose of heparin in him, he was able to clot his blood. Everywhere he was hemorrhaging had already clotted, even with a lethal dose of a blood thinner.
Wow.
And if he says it was his ability to control his bodily functions using that recording that saved his life. So we have that ability. I mean, here, some people think those are far-fetched stories. Even the simple things. A little kid falls down and skins his knee. It hurts.
Yeah.
He goes to his mother. His mother kisses his knee and instantly feels better.
Yeah.
That's a hypnotic suggestion.
Yeah.
Right? It's very powerful. We have those things all the time. We just don't even realize we use them in our daily lives.
Yeah, I was just reading that we have the ability to slow the death of red blood cells just by our mind. So all we have to do is just use our mind, and that's the power. And that's the reason for this actual summit, is to help people like you who went from where you were and let them know that it's possible that your mind can actually control a lot more, and we're not victims to like the medical, like, you know, medicine is necessary in a lot of situations, but a lot of times we have the ability to use the tools like you teach to get people or get somebody out of the situation. Is there any other situation or maybe people watching this who are sick, suffering, they need healing, that they can do instantly right here that might just like trigger something or get them to feel better? Or like, is there any tool that you can?
Well, I think usually doing the same thing is they need to create a picture of how they want to be healthy. I mean, if you go back, you know, to the times, you know, of a French doctor, Emile Coué, and he talked about every day and every way I'm getting better and better. He would have these patients he couldn't treat, and all he'd have them do was a zillion times a day just walk around saying every day and every way I'm getting better and better and better. And what they're doing is they're changing their self-talk, and some of them would get better. Yeah. You know, okay, so you look at the pharmaceutical industry, okay? They measure the success of a drug against the placebo.
Right.
Okay, and most of them don't perform any better than a placebo, or a small amount. So the question is, why aren't we studying placebos more? Why aren't we, if we have the ability to trick the mind into creating, and when you have a placebo effect on some of these things, they've actually done studies, their body's actually producing the same chemical reaction that the drug would produce.
Right.
All induced by the mind.
Yeah.
So why not? Years ago, there was a book written called The Relaxation Response by a Harvard medical professor, Dr. Herbert Benson. And it was about meditation. He called it the relaxation response and how it helped people. And basically, in the summation of his book, that people that meditated were able to access that relaxation response through breathing, lived longer. But then he wrote a book after that called Beyond the Relaxation Response. It's like, what if people did this to the extreme? What would happen? So they went to places like India and Tibet, and they studied these monks and these gurus that all they did was meditate all day long.
Right.
So in one of the places they went to in India, the gurus, or whatever you want to call them, they would meditate in these caves in India.
Yeah.
And one of the things they didn't understand is they'd go in there for 8-10 hours at a time. And what they didn't understand is they were natural habitats for cobras, and they wanted to know why they weren't getting bitten. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when they started examining their bodies, they were getting bitten all the time.
Wow.
They had no recollection of being bitten, and the poison had no effect on them because they weren't acknowledged. They were in such a deep meditative state, it had no effect on their body. They were immune to it. Or they would go into Tibet, and these guys would go out in the snow in the middle of the night in just a loincloth, go into a deep meditative state, stay there all night. They didn't get cold. They didn't get frostbite. Their body temperature was normal. They had the ability to control their heart rate, the surface temperature of their skin, anything they wanted to from practice.
Yeah.
So we have not even tapped in to the ability that we have in our minds. We're just scratching the surface.
And what you're
doing these things.
Yeah,
even just doing these things.
Yeah, what you're talking about too is going mainstream now a little bit, right? With the I don't know if you're familiar with the Wim Hof method.
No.
So Wim Hof is now, he's sharing that with the world. It's basically a breathing technique, but he sat in the ice bath for 2 hours and his core temperature didn't change. And they started to study him specifically because they would show that doing the breathing techniques, you tap into the mind in certain areas of the mind, like these monks would do after 8-10 years of meditating. So it is coming more into mainstream. And so that's the idea, is we share this with as many people as possible so people take their health back and they are in control. So, well, let's see where we are at time. So we got about 10 more minutes. Is there anything right now that you'd like to share about yourself that maybe people can find you and work with you, and how you work with people? Like if someone was looking to change their life, how do they go about working with a hypnotherapist?
Well, if they wanted to contact me, they can. I still work with people individually. I work with people all over the world. So geographical location is not a problem. They can come and see me. So actually, what's funny is we're talking about healing, is I am actually doing a TED Talk in New York, September 7th. And the title of my talk is Healing the World with Kindness and Love.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's the title of my talk. In fact, the theme of the program is Healing the World, or Fixing the World, I think is the theme of there. So it's kind of appropriate that we're having this talk right now.
Yeah.
But really working and focusing on finding, coming from a place of kindness and love is really everything. Because what happens is you create a new vibrational force and energy inside of you, and it really is contagious.
Yeah.
And so you come from this place and you start to share it, and then it affects somebody else, and it affects somebody else. And we start to create a chain and a new vibrational force in this universe. And that's where healing takes place. Because right now we live in a very divided world, and it's not good. So, but, if people want to get a hold of me, I think you guys have my contact information. I don't know if you want me to give it out or not, or. Yeah,
go ahead. We're going to share it with everybody in the video above.
Okay. So if people want to get a hold of me, I'll give you my personal email address. It's my first and last name @gmail.com. So it's SCOTTSCHM like Mary, AREN like Nancy @gmail.com. Here, I'll give you my phone number. It's 847-331-5848. And that is my number. Or if you want to get a hold of me through my website, it's www.ultimatevisionarymind.com. You probably find me by Googling my name too. So
that's how I found you. I remember hearing you for the Howard Stern show, and I just said, I want to interview that guy for this summit. And I typed in your name, you popped up, You saw the Oprah Winfrey. You guys, if you Google him, you're going to see him on the Oprah Winfrey show, which is pretty powerful stuff, hearing his story. So I love what you said. Love, kindness, but also gratitude. You do a daily gratitude list. I found that to be one of the most powerful things in my morning and meditation.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to do. Well, so I give this to all my clients. I've been doing it for a long time, and I've been posting my gratitude on Facebook probably now for 3 years without missing a day. And so I give this to my clients too. I say, okay, every day I want you to find 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you love or like about yourself, and 3 things you're good at.
Oh, cool.
And they have to be different every day.
Yeah.
So what happens for the average person who's not used to thinking that way is after the second or third day it gets really hard because they only can see the big thing.
Yeah.
And what it forces you to do is to start thinking in a different direction.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the self-talk they have is very negative. And you learn to find gratitude in small and simple things. And when you start to do it for a while, you learn to find gratitude even in negative things, when things happen to you and how you react and how you respond, what you learn from it. And what happens is you change the way you think that way. But it only works if you do it consistently. All these things work with consistency. It's the simplest tool we have. And I would say on the journey as you go on these things is to embrace the 3 best friends you have in this journey, which are patience, persistence, and faith. Patience is knowing that however long that journey is going to take, that's how long it's going to take. You know, we have an idea how long it's going to take in our head, probably not right.
Right.
And no matter how long it takes, you got to be in for it forever long it's going to take. You will get there, just not how long you think it's going to be.
Right.
Persistence. You know, we all think that going from point A to point B, straight line, never happens.
Right.
There's curves, there's potholes in the road, there's bumps. Those things were there because there's a lesson for you to learn. And what happens is a lot of times people start to make progress forward. They hit a bump in the road. Oh my God, the sky's falling, Chicken Little, and they run and they go right back to where they were before. And that's their subconscious mind resisting.
Right.
So knowing that whatever obstacle challenge you have to face, you just face it. And usually it's not as bad as you perceive it to be.
Right.
You'll learn something, you get through the other side. And the last one is faith. If you knew what you need to know to get from here to here, you'd be here already.
Right.
But you don't. So faith is knowing I'm going to start this journey. I don't know everything I need to know, but I have faith that I'm going to learn along the way, and I will get there. And this having that faith. So it's patience, persistence, and faith going with your kindness and love and your gratitude. And I think that's a magical mathematical formula.
Beautiful. I heard someone say you overestimate what you can get done in a year, and you underestimate what you can get done in 5 years.
I think that's a very good saying. I think that, you know, listen, I've been going to the same gym now since I lived out here probably for 5 years. My 2 least favorite weeks of the year are January 1st, and it's really right around the 17th. Because what happens, the gym is flooded in the morning.
Right.
And it's all these people that made a New Year's resolution to change their life.
Right.
And they're going to do it in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And if they don't transform in 2 weeks, in fact, you know, there's a national holiday now. There's one of those silly holidays. It's the national I give up my New Year's resolution day. And I think it's the 17th of January, which is about right. It's usually 2.5 weeks into the year.
Yeah.
So what happens? They're excited. They go to the gym. They work out way too hard the first time.
Right.
Their body is sore. They look in the mirror. They look the same. And it gets harder and harder to go back. And then they start rationalizing this is a waste of time. I'm never going to, it's a game. And again, it's trying to do too much, expecting things that are not realistic.
Yep.
You know, and people say, well, you know, no goal is really unrealistic. No, but, you know, if I weigh 360 pounds and I say, okay, in the next 6 months, I'm going to weigh 150 pounds, that's not impossible, but it's not realistic.
Right.
And what happens is you get discouraged. And and then the farther you go into it, the farther you fall behind. And then at some point you say, I can't do this anymore. So
those are beautiful. I'm glad we ended there, and we're going to end it now because I value your time. We're about up on time, but yeah, I'm in the gym industry, and what you say is so true. It's like people push too hard, their expectations are too high, their commitment is low, and really commitment plus consistency over time is the formula for success, right? It's just like, and that's how you program the subconscious mind too, is like doing it over and over again.
Yes. Well, you make change 2 ways. Okay. The subconscious mind changes 2 ways. Highly emotionally charged state can make change right away. We use hypnosis for that. However, most change, good or bad, takes place through repetition over and over. All the bad habits people have are from doing them repetitively. All the old negative habits they have that were ingrained in them from their environment, they heard since they were a little kid. Their prejudices, their religious beliefs, whether they're good or bad or indifferent, they were all programmed into their head through repetition. So over a long period of time, repetition is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
It has a lasting effect.
Awesome. Cool. So any last things that you want to say before we sign off here? People are listening to you. You gave a ton of valuable information. Anything you want to say to the people listening that?
I would say if you're going to start your journey, start it as soon as you get done listening to this. Because what happens is people say that they're going to do this tomorrow.
Right.
And then tomorrow becomes the next day, and it becomes the next day. And procrastination is the tool of your subconscious mind of saying we don't want to change.
Yeah.
So make a decision to change, and whatever you're going to change, and just start. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to study everything. You can do it while you start. Just start. Just take one tiny step forward in the direction you want to go in. And if you take a little tiny step every day, at the end of the year, you're in a totally different location.
Success likes fast action.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Scott, I appreciate it. And we're signing off. Thank you, Scott, for joining us for the Healing Mastery Summit. Is there any last plugs you want to say? Can they find you on Facebook? Do you have any books? Do you have anything coming out?
I have a book launch coming out in August on a weight loss book. It's called Diets Are Bullshit.
Oh, nice.
And it's about how the mind is a much more powerful tool than any other diet you've ever tried in your life. So the title is Diets Are Bullshit, and it's about you failed on every diet you've tried, so why keep doing it? So
perfect.
That'll launch in August. So the pre-launch will be in August.
Cool. Well, we'll share a link here, even if it's the pre-launch link or whatever, for you. And diets are bullshit. I'm interested in that. All right, Scott. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.